It's Elko Live time here on KELK. Wow, welcome back. It's so great to see our County Commissioner, Delmo Andreozzi, in advance of this afternoon's meeting. Delmo, thank you. Hi.
Well, it's great to be in studio with you today.
Thank you.
How are you doing? Everything's well, I hope?
Everything's well. We're ticking along here, and there's just, your agenda's busy. You're busy. You've got a lot of things going.
It just seems, I don't know what it is. It just seems like I'm doing less, but I feel more busy. So I'm not quite sure how to square that up in my mind, but I don't know. Maybe it's a point where you got to admit it's an age thing where I don't quite have the stamina, or I can't quite juggle as many things at one time anymore. So, but that's okay.
I do think life has sped up because of all of our devices and all the things that were supposed to make our lives so much easier.
Oh yeah, sure.
Yeah. So we'll look over today's agenda. Again, a few agenda items going into the meeting today that starts at 1:30. Ways you can participate, listeners. You can follow along online, which is what I usually do. It's super easy, elkocountynv.net. You can be there in person. I know you guys always like to look out and see people in the audience. It helps you when you're making your decisions. Yeah,
it is. It's really good to have, it's all part of that process, but I'm glad that we have multiple ways that people can participate. But sometimes, because, you just may not realize that people are there, and, and I'm very personal, as you know. So, the people in the audience, that's always great to have. But it's good to have other forms of mediums so that people can follow and stay up to speed. There's always a lot going on. And when I mean that, it's not just the county, it's all these governmental entities. There's a lot of business that's being conducted. So, that's a good way for people to stay informed, because it's pretty easy to feel like you're out of the loop if you're not following those, or you don't get agendas sent to you, which you could certainly get agendas sent to you from almost anybody. And then that way it kind of lets you kind of know what's happening with your local government, which, we keep talking about the role of local government and really what that does for people. So I definitely encourage people to be involved in their local government, whether they watch or participate, or, just whatever they want to do. And there's so many, we've had this conversation before, but so many different volunteer boards, everything from the fairgrounds all the way to CADV to the library, or my library, excuse me. it just goes on and on and on there. So there's lots of ways for people to be involved in planning commission, a lot of these decision making bodies that, the elected bodies really rely on.
Mm-hmm. And it helps you learn more about how government works too when you step in that way. So.
Absolutely. I've seen that be a pathway forward for a lot of elected officials, and it is a good place to kind of understand, really kind of see the NRS and the NAC and codes and really see how all that works in a public format.
And Delmo, and it's not that today's agenda is light, but I know we do have a little more time, and we will go over all this stuff. But I do think of you and the ways that you have been contributing to the community, you and your family, for decades. And when you started out with the city of Elko, you were quite a young man. But if it weren't for people around you who believed in you and supported you, and I'm thinking of Barbara Ericart, for example. I think of her, and not as many people understand, they don't remember, they don't know why Ericart Bridge or Boulevard is named the way it is.
Yeah, and I can remember, when I interviewed with her when the assistant street superintendent position opened up, and she was there at the interview, and so was Charles Williams, and that really was the only formal interview I had with the city of Elko, but she was there. She was kind of like an icon, and she was a great woman, as you know. She flew. She was very adventurous. She did a lot of things in her life which are really admirable. But she was so involved in the city government, and like you said, the bridge that was built over, after Project Lifesaver, the bridge that came in, bears her name, which and rightfully so. She was a force to be reckoned with, and so what a great way to honor her. And that does happen over time. I kind of was thinking about this. That's what happens to us. Sooner or later, people forget who we are. And that's just kind of that's kind of how life goes. I think you'll be remembered by your family, certainly, but it doesn't take long, and maybe people don't realize, gosh, 31 years at the city, and I go back there and I hardly recognize anybody there. It's a whole new team over there. So, lots changed, and thank you for bringing her up, because I hadn't thought about her in a long time.
Oh, Delmo, thank you. Well, both you and I have a dear friend, a colleague of sorts, just someone who's going through a lot of life changes, and he'll be relocating, and our hearts are with him, and we think about him, and he won't be forgotten. But it also, I think, bears in mind that we do the best job that we do to preserve these legacies, to do good work, to continue things, so that even if our names are forgotten, Delmo, there's still this pattern, tradition. We still have these expectations of, the best hopes for Elko. We just don't want to fall into some demise, because people forget.
Right. And I think that, you always think about, you got to remember things, or you're bound to repeat them, the good and the bad and the ugly. So, and for me, Lori, as I've just, having grown up here and having the challenges that I had at such a young life, and have been given so many opportunities, that's really what this is people saw things in me that I didn't realize, that I couldn't even see in myself. And so, just always had this strong desire to give back, to do the best I can. And, whether or not, I fall short or don't meet everybody's expectation, I can assure you that it's always my best intent, because I've always remembered from whence I came. And hopefully that's what, as it's hard. I've been kind of talking about this, but reflecting about this, but I'm in my last term, there's only 2.5 years left. That sounds like a long time, but it really isn't much time left. And so you get to thinking about, passing the torch and hoping that while you were involved, that you made a positive contribution to the community and the communities and the county as a whole.
Delmo Andreozzi is our county commissioner. We're leading into this afternoon's regular county meeting. Every one of us can make a difference, even if it's in a small way. It could end up sending ripples throughout that you're just not aware of. So,
absolutely.
Yeah, thank you, friend. And speaking of, the meeting will start off with a proclamation recognizing our dear professionals in emergency medical services.
Yeah, this is such an appropriate thing to always remember them, and it's one of those things that, it's a cost of readiness. We've been able to expand the ambulance service, but it does come at a cost. But this is a group of folks that, you hope that you never have to call, but if you do, they're going to be there. They're trained, they got good equipment, and they can get you transported to the hospital or whatever. And it's a great opportunity to just remember and reflect on what they do, because emergencies happen 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. There's no schedule or rhyme or reason, and they are committed professionals to what they do, and I appreciate them.
Well, thanks, Delmo. Also on the agenda, an agreement between Elko County and Dr. Kirsten Milligan providing medical direction services. Hard to believe, but Dr. Stavenko is retired or retiring from the ER at NNRH, and I think he saw Olivia when she was a baby once when she had a fever. That was how long ago. So he deserves retirement.
Absolutely,
yes.
Absolutely. You've seen all these great physicians in the ER come and go. I have a fond memory of Dr. Crum there when Michael was a small boy. One of these days I'll share it with you because it's a great story. But this is, we have a couple of areas in county government that we have to have a medical director for one is our ambulance service, and then the other one is our Board of Health. So we have, a public health official too. So, those are both required by statute, and we certainly want to thank Dr. Stefanko for his commitment to that role and serving not only Elko County, but also in his work at the hospital in the emergency room. And Kristen Milligan, Dr. Kristen Milligan, this is kind of a great, I knew her as a young gal, so it's so awesome for me.
I know,
she
grew up here.
Yeah, she grew up
and
here.
Came
so
back.
Come back.
Yes.
Welcome home. And to see her, take on this challenge. It just fills my heart, to see people go and become, have this profession, and these medical people can go anywhere they really can literally go anywhere in the world. So, to choose to come back home and serve this area, just feel very blessed. And then her taking on this role. So good for her, and thank you. And thanks for everybody that served in those roles in the past.
Yeah, it's a great thing for our community, but it also gives us moms and dads a lot of hope for the future.
Yeah, it does.
We'll skip around a little bit just in the interest of time,
Sure.
But moving on to county natural resources. Here's a cool thing about some water rights for an urban fishery, Delmo, and this is a couple of meetings in the making.
Yeah, this is a concept that's gone on for a very long time. I remember conversations about an urban fishery way back when I was with the city of Elko, and it really was part of a solution with the geothermal water and trying to partner with them, and just weren't able to really get that taken care of at that particular time. But this is a really, for me, is a real classic thing where you've got the city of Elko, you've got Nevada Department of Wildlife, and you got Elko County, all cooperating and working together to build an asset. Hopefully, there's still some steps that have to go through, but we're all working together to build an urban fishery right here in the Elko area. Near the Isherman Ponds. If you don't know where those are off 12th Street Bridge. It would be to the east of 12th Street Bridge over in that area. And, an opportunity to extend the Humboldt area recreation area, the HARP, to extend that area. And then, these are very popular. They're in other places in the state. And, I personally enjoyed it. When I'm in Reno, I'll take a walk around Virginia Lake or whatever. So they're really popular, but also an opportunity to give children or other people that may like to recreate in so many different ways, whether it's fishing or picnicking or whatever the case may be. But we kicked off the show talking about all the electronics, right? It's like getting unplugged from your electronics and enjoying the outdoors and maybe learning to fish. So, or fishing or whatever the case may be. And so it's a great partnership. The city of Elko's got their part, NDOW's got their part, but the big significant part of what we're contributing is when we purchased the Ellison Ranches where the rail port is, we have some water rights. And I know there can be a little bit of confusion, surface water rights or subsurface water rights. We have some surface water rights which flow into the Humboldt River, and so the idea would be to deed over those a portion of those water rights to NDOW to stock this pond and keep the water in there at a certain level, and we would donate that, and the value of that would be $250,000. And so it's a pretty good situation for them. It's a great, in my opinion, it's a great use of those water rights that we have, because they can't, like I said, they can't really be used for drinking in that way or any other development purpose like that. So it's a good use of that. And if for some reason it doesn't work out, they'll revert back to the Elko County. So it's just set up there kind of as a we're committed to giving them to them, and then there's a process that we're going to be going through. But really glad to work hand in hand with NDOW and the city of Elko to create this great asset in this part of the area.
Yeah, that'll be something to look forward to. And we'll be talking more about that too, Delmo, with NDOW and some other officials. The city's super excited too. James Wiley's been working hard on this. So then if we skip ahead a bit, we do want to talk about the general fund, the budget. It's budgeting season, if you will. Susan Paprocki is going to give the presentation. She's the comptroller. By the way, she does amazing presentations. These are so comprehensible.
Yeah.
Yes, and I really appreciate them.
Oh yeah, no, I worked with her a long time ago at the ECBA, and she was really good at, I'm a very visual person, and so she creates graphs, and they're really helpful for me. So I appreciate the fact that she does that, because it's really helpful to me. This is, our general funds, it's a big fund, so that kind of helps dissect it and, kind of see what kind of revenues we're expecting and what kind of expenditures that we have.
So generally, in a nutshell, again, thanks to Susan's good work, we take in about $43.6 million in revenues, according to this annual projection.
Mm-hmm.
The general government expenditures, about $12.8 million, but there's a total of, between judicial, public safety, public works, health, contingency, it's about $49 million. So
Mm-hmm.
we're spending a little bit more than we're taking in, according to those sources. And so we can certainly talk about that, or if there are any concerns. And then, just breaking it down by category.
Sure.
Yeah.
You always want to budget conservatively, which she does a great job doing. So, this is the revenues you want to be conservative of, and because, we've been there where we've had to make mid-year cuts, and it's not pleasant. So you want to be, this is a projection in revenues, and we're always optimistic that they come in a little bit higher than that. But really, one thing I want to point out to you, is our two largest pieces of revenue, and that is consolidated tax or sales tax. You can see that that's 41% of our general fund revenue, and property tax is 25%. So, the fact that we continue to grow, the assessed valuation grows. Well, we're turning vacant land into improved land, helps that to grow. But this consolidated tax piece, it's such a huge piece, and I think that's why we always talk about. And it's not just the county, but it's the cities and all these other things. That's why it's important that we really try to shop at home, because those revenues do help support your local governments with all the things they do. Now, you'll see when you look at this projection, this excludes some special revenues. It also excludes the I just lost. It'll come back to me in just a second. Enterprise funds. There we go. So water or sewer or some of those other enterprise funds. But the road department, you'll see, is not in here. That is funded entirely by gas tax. So, but you can see the breakdown of these revenues. Like you said, if you look over in the expenditure side, general government, which is really all the support services, is about $13 million. Now, the expenditures are pretty accurate. They're not. That's going to be where the revenues are kind of a conservative estimate. The expenditures, we know what they are. That we know what those are going to be. So the support services are excluding those enterprise funds and roads and ambulance. You can see that general government, which is support, is about $13 million. Judicial in and of itself, the judicial system's $14 million, and public safety is $18 million. So, the biggest chunk of, this really goes to public safety and to the judicial system. That is the biggest part of our government. And, it funds a lot, and these are all things that, that any government has to provide for, but how do we talk about how do you shrink those things, and it's hopefully what you do is get people out of that situation. Because in my mind, this is a very small part of our population that's really consuming this part of our pie. So how do we keep people out of the judicial system? How do we keep people out from doing bad things? But people have been doing bad things for a long time, so it's a really tough nut to crack. But you can just see how big of a piece of that government that is. It's big.
Yeah, we're talking about the cost of crime, basically, a judicial system, and there are many things that are included that aren't criminal, certainly, but
Sure.
other outside of prosecution. But $13.9 million goes to that, and within public safety is $18 million. So, of course, that includes our fire and law enforcement. So, it's fascinating. You can drill down in any of these categories, and again, I think Susan really gets into her work, and it's nice to be able to have someone on staff like that, and who also appreciates when people want to understand spending. Just in summary, the beginning fund balance was $10.4 million. The revenue, as we talked about, $43.6, spending about $48 million. Contingency is down $1 million because we did have a transfer in, I think, but that leaves us with the healthy or the required, I think it's a 4.8%.
It's 8.3 is,
8.3
recommended.
Oh, okay.
Is 8.3. So 8.3 essentially is 1 month of operating costs. So if you take 12 divided, that's why you come up with that 8.3. But it's recommended. We're landing at 10%, and it wasn't that long ago where we were
scraping by.
We were. I mean, we had to do some things that weren't super popular, but we had to do them to balance this thing out. We had to make sure that we were reliant on PILT funding and also net proceeds, and those things ebb and flow. And while we've had PILT for a long time, you never know what can happen to PILT. And so I should say that is payment in lieu of taxes, and the whole idea behind that is that in Elko County alone, 75% of our 17 million or 11 million acres, 17,000 square miles of Elko County, almost 75% of it is federally managed land and they're not paying property taxes on. So, that everybody else that has private property, that's where that property tax is coming from. So that was something that was set up to help offset that, but it's a very small number. If we get $6 million a year in PILT, which is what we got last year, $6 million for whatever 73% of 17,000 square miles, that's not a lot of money. When the rest, let's see, I got it right here, I'll tell you. So when everybody else, the other 25%, paid $11 million. So you can see it's not, but it's better than nothing, right?
Right. It is somewhat of an offset, and you would hope that with all these vast public lands, you generate, income based on recreation, based on ranching, mining proceeds.
Yep.
Certainly, you hope that'll offset.
Absolutely.
Continue that, but it's all part of the grand consideration for the future. So we're unique in that, and then it does lead us to, because not included in the general fund is capital projects. What we need to spend money on for growth and improvement for facilities. That's on the agenda, Delmo, and talking about amending maybe some of the services, architectural services related to a new judicial center. Yeah,
and so this went out for architectural design and came back with a huge price tag, and we really cannot.
It was
afford
$88
that.
million.
Yeah, so. We got to start somewhere, I guess. But I today, what I know, because we've finally seen what some of the financial projections look like. A long-term general obligation bond, really, in my mind, is not even anything that we should discuss, because it's a $30 million bond, and what you pay in interest over that time period is exorbitant. So it really doesn't, to me, it doesn't pencil out. A midterm bond, potentially that's a 10-year bond, but at that point we can only raise $40 million. So that's what we know. We've had that 44 cents going into the our capital fund, which we have not touched. By the end of this year, will be about 16 million, right? So we've got about 56 to $60 million to play with. So, my expectation is that, and we're not sold on going down the medium-term financing. I don't know if the rest of the commission is on board with that. I mean, some of them are, really firm believers on pay, saving it up, pay as you go. And I think really you need to look at the cost of money and the cost of the project over time to figure out whether or not that makes sense. So, my expectation with, we can chase design, but they've got to, we know what the number is. We need to tell them it's got to fit this budget. I mean, that's what we have to play with. So, because I don't want to be spending a whole bunch of money on design when we know we can't build an $88 million project or an $80 million project. We can't. It will be decades before we can do that. So, and there probably would be other needs before then. So I think we need to figure out a pathway forward. We do need to do an expansion, but it's going to have to be, I guess that when it was presented, I talked about, I need to be convinced that everything is warranted, reasonable. I think and I firmly believe this, when we're talking about a government building, it needs to be built well. It needs to be attractive, but it also needs to, it needs to be functional. It doesn't need to be, opulent. If that makes sense.
So what we're looking for is the scope of the project is design services for an Elko County Judicial Center. So maybe not quite as spread out or sprawling.
No, I think early on, I purposely called it a complex expansion project, right? Because until we really figure out who and what's going to go there, that's really all it is. But really, we've been really zeroing in on consolidating the court functions in one area. So, it will be a judicial expansion, but I just call it, the expansion just without necessarily the name,
So is it, and again, we might be getting into the weeds because the commissioners have to weigh in, just this contract that's being considered today is an amendment to the professional services with the architects. Yep. It's about $117,000 total. But are we talking about the right property on Idaho Street in particular?
Yeah, well, it would be that whole complex, that whole footprint. So, there was a lot of stuff with that original design. It was just conceptual, and there was, I had concerns with that. I mean, and people have brought that up. So, I think that you have the old, there was discussion about what to do with the old library. I mean, there's lots of things that need to be decided, so we've gone from, nice to have to, okay, let's get down to where we're going to be, and make sure it's in the spirit of what everybody agree. And not everybody necessarily is going to agree to it, but at least the 5 commissioners say or the majority of the 5 commissioners say that's what we're going to build. And so, that's what we need to get there, but it needs to be within budget. And so this amendment really essentially is redesigning what they've done to get it back into something a little bit more affordable.
All right. Part of the ongoing process, still more to come on this because again, people get excited. And when you said, go ahead. I was
going to say it's good to be informed. It's good to listen, good to pay attention. But, the dirt's not turning anytime soon. We don't even have the financing in place. So, and we certainly don't have the $50 million or whatever the number is. We don't have that in the bank. Like I said, at the end of this year, we'll have about $16 million that we haven't touched from the 44 cents that was generating about $8.6 million a year that's just locked up in future capital.
Right. And in concert with that, county commissioners doing what many believe is the right thing by providing the 20 cents of that for the school district for capital projects.
Right. So going forward, there was a lot of process that went on with that, and essentially where we landed. So it was something that I felt really important about. I felt it was important that Elko County retained 22 cents to go to our capital fund. And the reason why 22 cents is because it generates about $5 million a year, which is, if we bonded that midterm bonding, that's what the debt service is $5 million a year. So that's why that number was really important. From the onset, we've had 6 cents dedicated to the WFPP, which is the Wildfire Protection Plan area, which is our insurance, because we know that wildfires can be catastrophic. And so this plan that we participate on helps us with the reimbursement if we, God forbid, have another disastrous fire season. and then 2 cents. We were talking about taking 2 cents, and we've helped support the city of Elko with a flight alliance, and we're talking about dedicating 2 cents to that. So really, out of all that, it really only left the 20 cents for the school district, which will generate again, right around $5 million a year for 4.8 or whatever number it is. But just suffice it to say, this is near $5 million. And, so I think that's good, because then they know that what they have to work with. And I think when we went through that process, for me, I'm pretty sure I made the motion on that, but I had some guardrails that I wanted to have, and it really just all boils down about working together, communicating, and making sure everybody's aware of what I would hope that everybody, and us included, is that we do what we say we're going to do. Say this is what we're going to do, and that's what we do. That's what we should do.
And it seems like the pendulum has finally centered a bit, Delmo, between the school capital and spending, and then what the county needs too to progress in the future.
I think so.
It feels that way.
It does, and I would say that it's not off the table, and we need to be careful about how we say this. But and I only mean that because you can't ask people to give up tax rate for the purpose of giving it. You just can't do that. But maybe if you remember, there was 75 cents. County took 50, and 25 cents else. That got absorbed. So potentially, at some point in the future, the county could, if some of that tax rate came back into the overall pot, that we could also give that to the school district as well.
All right. So that'll be future and ongoing discussion. Well, and speaking of, and then we'll get to the Lions Club Campground, because that's a big deal. But the event center, when you talked about, or the earth hasn't turned yet, but we've got $15 million on the table. Yeah.
And again, I have my own personal feelings on that, my own opinion, which is what I get paid to do. I guess being an elected official, you get to have an opinion. So, when we first started that, essentially we got COVID, ARPA, whatever money you want to call it. We got a lot of money. We could have just thrown that at the government and then absorbed it and used it. But, we didn't do that. We invested it in a variety of different things. And this idea of an event center came up, and so what we did in the way I look at it is that we pledged. We haven't spent it; it's pledged. It's there. It's sitting there. It hasn't been given to them. It can't be given to them until we get some type of a contract and some type of a resolution to do that. And some may think we're a little bit closer than I think we are. There's a lot of information that I'd like to have. I think the location is important. What are we building? Because I brought this up at the commission meeting. I worry about, duplicating things that we already have, or undermining something else that we have, so I think we need to be very thoughtful about. So like I said, fundamentally from the beginning, in my own mind, we had one-time money that we didn't have, we weren't expected to have. How is it that we could use that money to benefit, grow the economy, So that's really my thought behind it, and I know that some people might say something about aircart or secondary access, but until we have the alignment identified and really have a good idea of what that's going to, that money would have just sat there and we're working towards. Which I think should have been done a long time ago, to identify an alignment and really kind of understand what the full growth potential is in the greater Spring Creek area, so that we understand, we want to right size the roads, because roads are expensive, so that's until you have an alignment nailed down and understand what's going to cost. It's just out there ethereally.
And we do know the $15 million that has, the clock is ticking on that, because there's a deadline to spend that or appropriate that or obligate it, as you're talking about. Doing it in documentation. Promising it is one thing. But as you've been reminding us, there are other needs. ECVA has a debt that needs to be retired. That's an existing facility. Elko Convention and Visitors Authority. You mentioned the Flight Alliance of Northern Nevada. So there are other ways or places to spend
absolutely
the $15 million?
Absolutely. That's the one thing, is there's no shortage of priorities. I mean, I look at our own fairgrounds. I mean, I don't know what the long-term plan is with that, but I mean, holy smokes, that was built, I don't know, 80 years ago or whatever it is, 80 years ago, and then it needs some love over there, for sure. So, but I think a lot of it depends. I mean, if you were able to, and I know there have been efforts to move the fairgrounds before, but that's why I think if you build an event center, the location would help transfer that fairgrounds in the future. So the location, I think, is kind of a big deal, right? So.
Right.
I mean, that's kind of my thought anyway, but I have weird ideas sometimes, Lori.
Well, and it's probably safe to say, just from the advantage of looking from the outside, there are only 2 commissioners that are thinking the way you do. And so this could, it could go either way. So commissioners need to hear from the public and what to do with the $15 million. Nothing being said against a livestock event center. It's just that you've described a lot of different needs, and the county has to decide what to do with this money on a deadline.
Absolutely.
All right. Anything else on your agenda right now?
Oh gosh. Well, there's like we were talking about, there just seems to be so much going on.
Lamoille Camp
Oh,
Lamoille.
yeah.
Oh,
Okay.
of course,
Yeah.
because that fits into this. Because
it does.
with the stroke
does.
of a pen,
Yeah.
you gave the Lions Club $750,000, friends.
Well, again, they don't have the money yet. It was just like everything else. It was pledged, right? So, but now we do have, and again, this was this one-time money, and we sent a couple of million to Spring Creek. We sent $500,000 to EIAA for their school, and so we've spread that.
Fairgrounds, horse racing, rodeo,
Stampede.
yes.
So we shared that around, trying to again use that one-time money to shore those things up. And we know, in my mind, with that devastating fire and the loss in Lamoille, and trying to come up with a solution there, we finally, again, we have a pledge. Now we have the actual agreement, the actual resolution that would, sets the expectations and says, here's what you need to do, and it all has to be above board. It has to be, there's all kinds of rules and regulations involved there. But hopefully it leads to the future development of, and it has to happen again in short order, development of a new complex out there that we lost the Whipple Lodge, so building a new lodge out there, that has been that, and the community and the Lions, and even with the Forest Service, I would tell you the Forest Service has worked hand in glove with the county, because there's been floods up there. There's been all kinds of chaos up there. So
credit to Josh Nichols.
Absolutely. That guy he's been great to work with, for sure. So, so all of this is lining up. You see the pavilion up there, you see a parking lot that's been built, all these things incrementally. And this has all been donations of the community and stuff. So we can build a lodge. Maybe it can be a place that Elko County people can enjoy for, just like the Lamoille Grove or whatever the case may be. So, we're finally about there on that one. And, hopefully, just because we pledged the money and now we have the agreement, they have to execute, so there still has to be an execution. And if it comes in way over budget, then, so who knows? There's still a ways before we get there.
All right, that's on the agenda. Resolution form to hereby reimburse the Lions Club Camp Lamoille $750,000, reconstructing the beloved campground there, and it's contingent upon Lions Club Camp Lamoille entering into an agreement with the county that determines conditions or limitations. So yet more to come on that. This is just the resolution.
Yeah, and the grant, the agreement's there too.
It's attached.
It's the second. It's the second one. Let's see where are we at here. You jumped past me there. We got there. I'm sorry here.
No, you're okay. I think I did read that. Yes.
So K1. I'm sorry. L1 is the grant agreement, and then L2 is the resolution.
And then when you get there, point out on the resolution that there is a mistake because it refers to Silver State Stampede. Did you catch that?
I
Okay,
did catch
cool.
that, yeah.
All right, so they'll fix that, no worries. And Delmo, other than that, we talked about a lot. I guess we should have given some more time to talk about.
Are we out of
something.
time?
Yeah, I mean, you're welcome to go, but you'll be late for your meeting. We can't have that, so.
Well,
All right.
well, Lori, it's always good to be here, and I mean, it's about, I hope, like I said from the onset, I mean, I want to share information, whether or not everybody agrees, that's just part of the process. But at the same time, I want to be open, and you can ask me anything you want. People can ask me whatever they want, and I know right now we're kind of up to our elbows in crickets, and it's a little bit overwhelming, and I know there are a lot of frustrated people out there, and that's a really tough one to tackle because there's so many of them. But we do have resources out there trying to do the best that we can, and I know they're gross and obnoxious, and I don't think anybody's been unscathed. I know Commissioner Steninger has their house there in Jarbidge at my father-in-law's place, or they were last year, but I'm sure they're going to be there again this year. They were in Elko Summit Estates where Commissioner Carr is. So I mean, we've all felt the impacts of the crickets, and I can't wait for the day that they go back into hibernation for a decade or two. That'll be a day we're celebrating.
I just think about entomologist Jeff Knight, and he said the least popular but probably the most practical approach is leave them alone and they'll go home. I mean, because they're migrating. They're not. We bait them. We are trying to, all these things. It just exacerbates the problem.
Well, and there's just, I think, literally billions of them.
Yeah. Well, that's just it. They're here to replace us, Delmo. So, all right.
Well, again, thanks, Lori. I appreciate being on the radio with you today and talking to the great listeners out there. So thank you very much.